Again, I think that we're starting to see a shift and change for the central banks and their responses to that inflation, that we may well start to see interest rates start to become less volatile by a tiny bit more predictability, which will hopefully be better for bond markets. So I'm quietly optimistic that we might not see the same degree of really nasty erosion going on with bond portfolios. The third big one is, of course, private equity, and with private equity, it's every business is being impacted. Well-run businesses, badly run businesses, and there'll always be behind the eight ball, I think, in terms of what we see and how we see it and how quickly we see results. My feeling is that we're still going to have a year in New Zealand and Australia of tough liquidity, tough access to credit, and the phenomenon that we've seen in New Zealand, which is that our small businesses are basically run off the gearing of a mortgage. That is SME, that's small medium enterprises in New Zealand. And everything that's been done on those businesses has always been done on the back of, frankly, is off the back of a mortgage. And we know, I don't need to tell you what that's looking like out there for everybody. And that's going to be with us for some time. I mean, it's not going to be gone by December. No. So that will have, I think, an impact on companies operating, and that we might not see the startling results that we've seen in the past. But I'm hoping that that's going to be somewhat offset by what might be more stabilising macro markets in the sense of equities and bonds. So all in all, I'm a little bit, I feel less of an inclination that we're going to see the much vaunted crash, as people have been indicating. In terms of global equity markets, I feel a little bit more comfort there. But that's just, as you say, that's just an opinion coming from me. Yep. On what I've seen. So
you raised the IT enterprise, and Bruce, we've discussed this last week, didn't we? And on direction, we've been asked probably council to front up with another 2 million to carry on. So this enterprise is a big threat of not getting it right to our industry. You're saying this is pretty common?
This is a common conversation in boards and common conversation with a number of councils, especially those that have been recently investing in new enterprise risk platforms. And look, you've seen it. You've seen some of the more public issues that have happened with some of the public listed companies. Synlait is a great example of going down a route that becomes a massive capital cost and a disruptor, because of course you get it wrong and it disrupts the whole way you operate. It is probably getting more specialised lip service than I've seen anything anywhere else. It's frankly on a par with climate change in terms of, but it's got a here and now element to it. Not a huge, and these are with big, these are big with big systems like SAP, and some of them. But I mentioned the point about the more you go and try to tailor your own solutions, and you try to tailor bespoke elements, the greater the degree of risk is that you're going to get wrong.
Okay, now just a question.
Can I just remind, sorry, Jeff, let's just keep in mind the confidentiality of
Yep,
some of
no
our
sweat.
discussions.
Yeah, no sweat. I was just asking the 263, was that forecasted for this budgeted area versus what you projected could be in our last meeting? The IT software expenditure of 263.
No, that was unbudgeted.
That's unbudgeted.
Yeah.
Over and above. Okay.
Other councillors' questions, Joe?
Yeah, Stuart. Our investments has been our hedging system for this council. And it's a hedging system, they're under a little bit of stress at the moment. What are other councils experiencing in failure to receive struck rates from their community? And is that trend causing cash flow trend causing trouble for these councils who may not have our investments? And there's another question is, how should we be responding to that threat?
It's a really interesting question, Joe. There are not a lot of councils that have the big buffer that this council has, and certainly territorial councils. Yes, there are regional councils that have got good buffers, you know, and many of the regional councils do. But if we think about territorial councils, most have a degree of revenue leverage, i.e. they've got debt. Now, there are not many without debt. You know, we've got no net debt. So for them, and it's been a question I've been asking for the last year about the element of, hey, we've got a shrinking wallet going on socially, and are you seeing signs of? Are you immediately starting to see signs of an increase in arrears? Now, the message that I've had back, but only from a very limited number, but they're probably a good example of this council's demographics, is that they haven't been seeing they hadn't up until October seen an increased trend on arrears. But the anecdotal that I've been getting in the last 3 months has been that it's starting. The conversations are occurring. There are people that are calling to say, I cannot pay. And there's been a bigger increase in those councils in terms of thinking about the solutions to those problems, i.e. what are we going to do? I mean, nobody wants to put the hard word on rates arrears in relation to the legislative action that you have at your disposal, being having a charge over rates. And I think that they first and foremost, those conversations are also, well, I'm seeing being had with banks, because it's often the banks that if there's a mortgage, the banks will get are the first to be asked, you pay, it goes on the mortgage. I mean, that's how it works within the legislation. And it's the feedback coming back from the banks that's going to be interesting over the next 3 months when we start to see that coming through. That's going to give you a real idea of what your your catchment area is going through.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. It's good to know, and perhaps we could get updated, you know, as more information comes to light and the trend around the country. It'll be handy to know.
I'll pick something up.
Thank you, Stuart. Aroha mai, Rick. Over to you.
Look, I've got to apologise. I thought it was my fault that I couldn't get in, and then Chris told me that the system had to be restarted. So that's why it took so long and so many attempts. I just wanted to say, it's not often I agree with you, Stuart, but it's a very good comment. I tuned in, get you on your comments, and that was awesome. So totally agree with the recession comments and the enterprise system comments. So I just wanted to say, have we heard from Bruce yet? Did Bruce or Simon comment on the report? I missed that. I didn't catch that. Sorry.
Sorry, Rick. Yes, he did. Bruce already did comment. Was there something particular that you wanted to?
I just wanted to say that normally we get a comment from Jonathan Erickson, and we have not got a comment this time. So I don't know whether Bruce covered that or Simon. I can't see if Simon's there, but you know, it normally is a good balance from Jonathan and the reporters come in. But if Bruce covered it that time, thank you, and I'm pleased I can agree with you on a couple of things, Stuart. So that's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Bruce, did you want to just respond around the Ericsson?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Rick, the upshot is there was a $99,000 loss in May for the managed funds, and putting that through transfer to reserves, it has a 15K unfavourable variance on the bottom line. Yes,
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you, Bruce. Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Just a question and further down the financial report about the delay in the Aotearoa Māori River flood mitigation spillway due to delays in securing land use for Pukekohe Bridge. Are we confident that this is progressing to our satisfaction?
Yep, so that particular one around the bridge, yes, that is happening, and the bridge is progressing on track. There's been a slight delay in the pouring of the of some of the concrete, but they've found ways around that, and there's time in hand in the plan for the bridge. There could be some delay in the third stage of the project, but we're just working with Tarita Marae around some of their concerns at the moment, and if as long as we can start that stage 3 by October, we should be completed by our date of December 2023.
And similarly, the delay to the Awanui flood protection works, that seems, because that's a little minor delay, is it?
Yes, yeah, it's all weather related, just because we didn't have a summer season of work that we would normally do.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions or comments?
Just rather a bleak one. Both people in the Kaitaia community and the Kiri Waipapa community are asking when their liaison committees are going to meet. So just if staff can flag that as please.
Thank you,
Yep.
Joe. That's fine. Okay, so back to the recommendation. That the report, financial report, 31st March, be received, and we had Joe and Amy moving that. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. That's an aye, I'm assuming, from Rick. Next, page 22, Ngā Take, and we have Ruben with oversight of environment funds. So there are 4
I'm happy to move.
recommendations altogether. That's all right. Thank you. So that's Jack, and who would like to second that, please? Peter Lucas. Thank you. Ruben, did you want to just briefly?
I don't have anything further to add. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Joe?
Yep. I'd like to proceed to question and comment. I was on a previous council where this the current policy was developed, and the reason why it developed was there was some criticism of the some of the allocations were quite questionable previously, and we ended up having bring it into council for the final sign off. And I just wondered if you remove this requirement for the chair or some delegated councillor to give the final decision-making sign off, how do you prevent those difficulties from arising again? And they were significant at the time.
Well, I guess I partly initiated this one really because I get asked as chair to approve little, very, very small funding, someone to fence and they get $5,000. And honestly, to me, it's the wrong level. We should have that type of delegations to Jono.
Yeah. So I have a suggestion there.
Can we let Jono respond?
Yep.
And then hear that? Yeah.
Kia ora, Chair, if I could just add, I guess this is the only grant scheme we've got in council that requires the chair to sign off. We've got a number of other ones across biosecurity, across Kaipara remediation program, where we have an approved criteria and approved delegation limits for staff to then exercise those delegations from an efficiency perspective. I've been here for a little while and I recall some of the issues with the e-fund when we first got up and running, and they were very true issues that Councillor Carr raises. I do wonder if we've gone through those initial teething problems of getting it up and running, and that now we've got a more refined and consistent process that hopefully we're able to use that staff delegation. Again, this is council decision as to where you want to sit there. We've set the delegations reasonably low from a financial threshold perspective, with anything that goes over and above those financial thresholds or that don't comply with the agreed criteria needing to come back to council for approval. But again, it's at council's discretion. You may wish to retain sign off on this if you choose. But this is us putting it up for your review consideration. It's also, I also note in the paper that you can expect the paper to come from Ruben again within the next 3 or so months. Ruben, I'm just trying to remember what our time to bring back a paper to council to get greater consistency across all of our different grants, because as they've sort of over history developed different grants for different particular purposes, we've got a little bit of inconsistency across the different funds as to how they're managed, how they're allocated, and all those sorts of things. So we're wanting to bring it back another paper that provides greater consistency. But again, yeah, we place it there for governance feedback or governance direction.
Do you mind, Joe, if we hear from Rick and then Jack and then circle back? We hear a few of the thinking, and then John. Yeah, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruben. I'm very happy with the process. I think it's very unnecessary for the chair to be involved with this. I think there's enough rigour in the process, and as John really answered my question, that he maybe 7 years ago it wasn't so good, Joe, but it's definitely been through the ringer now, and I'm more than happy with the process, that it has enough check marks in it to make sure it's quite safe. So very happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, if I could just add, he's also proposing some more transparency about all of the allocations now being transparently put on our webpage. So there is the utmost transparency on where the money is being allocated. Again, if there are any issues there with it, it's again trying to be as transparent as we can about where public funds are being allocated. Sorry, Chair.
Goodbye. Thank you for that addition, Jono. Jack.
Yes, like John just answered my question. When we went through this, I'm happy to support the recommendations, but I suggested that we did add that fourth recommendation, that the information is fully transparent by being placed on the website. And I think that I mean, I actually agree with you, Joe, that we need to be completely transparent, but I think this offers transparency in a way that takes away it's an imposition on the chair's time. So I'm quite happy to support it as it is, unless you've got a better mechanism. Thanks.
Let's go to Joe. Oh, sorry, John. And then
Yeah, no, and this would be, oh, sorry, John. Yeah.
I've been on board of trustees where, we're dealing with public money, similar to this position, and we've always had the right to go through all the receipts and look at them. And I used to make sure that one of the trustees did it each month. Knowing that that happened was probably took away a risk, a chance of risk of fraud. So I sort of encourage that that we should be entitled to be able to see these at any time, but it doesn't have to be mandatory that the chair doesn't.
Great. Joe?
So my suggestion is you got a biodiversity chair, and that this would actually be transferred to the chair of your biodiversity portfolio.
Well, I am raising it because I don't believe governance at this level should be dealing with such nickels and dimes, honestly. And so that's why I didn't recommend that another councillor do that. I think that, yeah, with these, what we're really looking at is these maximum amounts, giving the ability for operations to carry through with these transparent processes.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Anybody else? Any other comments? Does the chair of biodiversity want to respond? Like, I don't know.
I think John's got a valid point. You know, somebody in the council doesn't have to be you too, because a lot of on your shoulders. You could just sign it off because we're all responsible. Somebody brings it up. We haven't got some sort of level of authority. Yeah, I sort of agree.
Okay, great.
Just on that level.
Thank you. So we're all agreeing with the recommendations. Any other further discussion?
Yeah, just the recommendation number 3, just the wording of it seemed a little bit unclear to me. So the decision to grant environment fund applications is required by council. Now, is that around the council table in those larger projects, or it's?
Yes.
I can elaborate on that.
Yeah, can you clarify
please,
that?
Greg.
Yeah, so it's effectively granting by exception. So what we're saying, what we're recommending is any activity that is outside the agreed thresholds or processes must go to council for a determination, and that's basically consistent with the way we would operate any activity that's outside the agreed process that council has set about for staff's operational activities. So what we're saying is that this is the activity of administering the Environment Fund, provided it's in a manner that's consistent with the agreed council process, is an operational matter. Any matter that is outside that becomes a governance decision.
Does that give you clarity, Marty?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I understood, but I'm just pointing out the wording of this one, whether it's council with a capital C or whatever, or the council table comes back to the council for ratification. Yeah, it's not absolutely clear.
Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah,
just the wording.
Council as in, will it come to this table, or will it?
Yeah.
Because currently there's spreadsheets that get emailed to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
to the chair. So the idea, so no, the requirement would be that it goes to full council for a decision.
So would we, maybe would it come into the formal meetings, like once a month we would see the list of those that we, want to be approved?
So because it's by exception, it's only those applications that don't meet that criteria, and those are very rare. In fact, they don't happen actually.
You may see one a year, Chair.
Yeah.
That breaches those criteria because of the co-funding requirement for landowners' capacity to actually progress these. Most of them are smaller type ones that fit within that criteria. So yeah, I would only expect to see one, maybe 2 a year.
I'm absolutely happy to vote for it. Just tweaking the wording of where everybody sees it's absolutely clear.
Did you want to update the recommendation with text? New text?
Capital C.
Does any of the staff want to make suggestion? So is it number 3 that the decision to grant Environment Fund applications is required by council? And you want more clarification?
Yeah, just a clarity on that, what council means, because the whole building is council. So is it council with capital C as it comes back to council table?
Meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm happy for it to be worded to achieve that.
Could we just say full council?
That'd be good. Yeah, thank
Great,
you.
perfect. With that amendment, yes, Peter Luca.
O he poto aku kōrero, engari e kōrero ana hau mo te tūkanga. Ara te pai aru rapu, te tikanga rapu i te hunga ka whakawhiwhiki e nei pūtea. Aha koa o tātou hia ki te whakamaramatu ki te iwi whānui maruna i te ipurangi me tō tātou whārangi ipurangi. Hea hara te whakatai. Me whakaro hoki tātou ki te tūkanga, ki te tikanga rapu. Kia o tiai tātou te kite, hea hara te tikanga rapu i whāia e te hunga aromatawai. Ētahi o ngā kamupene, ētahi tuku pūtea, ētahi o ngā kamupuni tuku pūtea, e tiki nā atu ana e rātau, ētahi tāngata motuhake ki te aromatawai i te funding application, ne. Kei kōrero hia, ko ngā āpiha he hanga kōmirimiri. Nā reira, e hara i te mea, he aha, engari e kore e kāhore ka hoki mai tēnei ki tēnei tēpu, hei whakarotanga mā ngā kaikaunihira. Te rāpea he pai ka puta i te tiki atu i ētahi kei aromatawai motuhake. Kore kau he pānga ki enei rāranga mahi. He whakaro tērā. Kia ora.
Councillor Jones is speaking about criteria and allocation and the process of transparency. So even though we want to be as transparent as possible as council, we must also think about the process so that they can see that the process that we've followed as council to allocate these funds. Some companies who give funds, they also invite independent moderators to come in and oversee this. Otherwise, we may be said to be biased in this. This will also come back to us as councillors. And we may find a benefit of this to get external assistance in this case.
I think it is something I'm sure that our staff, work into the process of applications, ensuring that, there's that decisions are made in an unbiased way. And we have those safeguards in place that can be responsive to what Peter Lucas has raised. Or would it be okay for our staff to note that and then, but however still keep moving?
Haere tonu me ngā mahi, engari he whakaro tērā, e whakatakotongi ana e ahau. E hara mo tēnei kaupapa katoa, engari ngā kaupapa katoa e pāna ki te tuku pūtea, ki te kaitono mo te pūtea.
And absolutely keep going ahead with this. It's not just for this alone, but it's for all allocations of funds.
Noted. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. All right. Sounds as if we may be ready. So just a reminder, we have Jack moving, Peter Lucas seconding. The 4 recommendations there with the text update on point 3. Go, Marty.
Well, just a response to that, if you could, through you, Chair and Kawati, is that there are points where it doesn't need external oversight into the building, that we can leave it to our staff. We as governance are responsible. So I'm perfectly comfortable with this process here, that it doesn't need to go to an external one, knowing that we're going to be reviewed, or they've got the possibility to be reviewed publicly. So if that can be brought across, will be fine.
Thank you. You've noted that, haven't you, Jono? It's not going into here, but in the processes, they will, whether or
Madam Chair.
we need to go there. Joe.
Yeah, I think Peter Lucas, Councillor Peter Lucas makes quite a good point. And an easy way for us to actually see how this happens is maybe we could have a map, and all the council expenditure goes on this map in Northland. We just see where it all falls, and it'd be quite a good way of looking at things. But there has been quite a lot of criticism about how the biodiversity and the E-Fund has been used, and even quite recently, and where it's falling. And it's often not falling where the environment needs it most. I'll just leave it there.
I wonder whether, when the time does come that this kaupapa is reported on, in a way that council could understand, to, I guess, ensure geographic, diversity and equity, in terms of decisions. John, did you want to?
Good, Chair. Thank you for the feedback, councillors. I noted at the start that Ruben's also going to be leading a bit of a broader review of all of our grant programs, and I wonder if we take this as good feedback for that. And particularly, I've noted down do we need an additional annual step of reporting to governance of where the expenditure has gone, so that you've got a level of transparency and knowing that at the end of the day, governance level accountability for where those ratepayer funds are being allocated, so we can build that into our system as well. Like I said, the allocations are transparently recorded on our website so that they're publicly available, but having an extra level of governance, annual reporting of where it's gone, how it's been allocated, I think we can build into our system. And like you say, Councillor Carr, it doesn't have to be limited to the E-Fund. It can also be looking at our other funds that we allocated around biosecurity. I've noted down the mapping, the GIS component of it, and we'll have a look to see how easily that might be able to be provided as well.
Thank you, CEO.
Jake.
Just one last comment. Thank you for this discussion. It's all been illuminating. I think as part of the review, it'd be useful for councillors if Ruben describes the criteria as they are for all the different funds, and so we get a degree of comfort about how it's arrived at. Well, because the criteria are reasonably complex. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Good, Chair. Yes, we can do that, councillor, only to note that if you want to then start reviewing the criteria, that's a whole big nother fish. Those things are pretty complex.
Yeah.
And that's not to say no, that governance can't, but that's not what the particular paper that Ruben's going to be bringing back is our full review of the criteria. We can provide it, but that's another piece of work.
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting we review them. I'm just suggesting that transparency is great for all of us if we know what those criteria are. I think we have a whole lot more confidence, and then we won't be nickel and diming like we've been doing in the past. Thanks.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah. All right. So with that, then I can't see anyone else with questions or comments. Rick's showing his thumbs up. So with that, Jack moved, Peter Lucas seconded the full recommendations on 22, with the inclusion of having full council meeting in the text for recommendation 3. All in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carry. Thank you. Next is operational reports. Page 25. Recommendation that the report be received. Do I have a mover? John and then Amy. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
I do have a question.
Go, Marty.
On speeding. Is it when car goes 1 kilometre an hour over the limit, is that in regard of that comes up beep?
But shall we go through Beryl, or would you like to add that?
So we get a recording every time someone goes over speed. For our policy that we've implemented though, if you go over more than 10 kilometres over the speed limit for more than 10 seconds, and you've got like a 3 strike type rule for our staff, we get that recorded, and that's our threshold. We've also got a 200 metre buffer around change of limits because of the technology in the car don't always pick up exactly where that change of speed is. So that's our sort of tolerance, I guess, within our policy on how and what gets recorded.
I'm just trying to picture trying to overtake someone on the Akarama overtaking lane, which may be more than 10 seconds, might be.
Don't speed.
Well, you are legally allowed to go over the speed limit to overtake. And if someone, you're sitting behind, sitting behind someone at 80 kilometres an hour and they use the overtaking lane as a mini motorway, then you have to speed up faster because they're speeding up then to 100. You know that when you get out of that, they're going to be down to 80. And so you are allowed to overtake over the speed limit to get over someone. That's what I learned when I started to drive.
Kia ora, Chair. I'm not an expert on the law, but I know our policy is that you can't, we don't provide any allowance for speed, for passing lanes or overtaking. We've got a flat rule of you can't go over the speed limit.
You know, this looks worse than it is. I've had this in my own business, E-Roads, and our discussion around the table is you get caught out, for example, and Beryl will probably back me up on this. Coming down the Kamo bypass, it goes to 50 to 80 within the railway line section. Bang, you get caught. So we look at the report, oh, shit, okay, remind yourself it's 50 k's. These places on this highway that are very difficult to negotiate with, you're concentrating on driving, you're not actually speeding. Technically, you don't think you're speeding, but you're breaking the law. So I think there needs to be a little bit of, you know, common sense around these issues, that you look at that graph and you go, oh, we're speeding poorly. But I think if Bill breaks it down, it'll be those little 30 k's, 50 k's and 80 k's. I don't know how to figure them out going down this highway. You know, 1 minute's 50, next minute's 70, next minute's 80. So I'd like, on behalf of the staff, I don't think it's as bad as what it looks. I just think she could back me up. I'm not sure, but this is what I've seen in my own business.
Kia ora, Chair, through you. What we've implemented here, though, is about the culture of the organisation. We didn't have a strict policy of follow up with staff, so it was kind of, the policy was there, but it wasn't necessarily followed up with staff. So I acknowledge what you've said there, but it's pleasing to see that from February to March, our events have significantly reduced, and I think that's about us having a proactive policy about following up with staff, so that it's not just a policy that we don't enforce, acknowledging some of the points that you've made there, Councillor.
Fine. Okay, any other questions and comments?
Just one little question.
Oh, sorry, Jack, yes.
About cyclone health and safety issues with slips and stuff. Do we have our vehicles equipped with road cones and flashing lights and other safety equipment that can assist us? There's always something I used to insist upon when I was the biosecurity manager in Auckland. We always make sure for staff safety, if they had to stop on the side of the road, they could put a cone here, put a light on the roof, magnetic one that you could plug into the cigarette lighter, just to give the staff some comfort about being safe on the road. Do we have any of those kind of, what's that, tow ropes and all kinds of stuff? So I don't need the answer now, but when you're ready.
Yeah, I can actually answer some of that. We do provide we do actually have bags available under our traffic management plan. So there's cones and lights and those sorts of things, but for the day-to-day vehicles, no, we don't.
Okay, so what proportion of vehicles do you think might have them carried?
That I'm not too sure.
Okay. Something maybe to think about. I mean, I know that it was a good cultural thing because people felt safer, and also staff were able to help others when they're out in the field. They come across a slip or an accident, or, you know, any multitude of things that happen when you get a disruption on the road. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
E hara I te kōrero roa, engari e hihia ana hau ki te tuku I tētahi pātai, mo tētahi o ngā kaupapa kei te pārangi toru te kau. Kei reira e tahi kōrero mō te pū, mō tētahi pū, I te kaupeka o te tau hanuere ki te maihe. Kua whakatūria tētahi rōpū kia tirohia ngā tikanga e pāna ki te whakamahi I te pū. Ka mutu he take nui tērā te pū. Tērā te pū tētahi o ngā take toranga pū nui I te ao, I Aotearoa nei, I te taitoke rau hoki. Nā reira, e whakaaro ana hau ki ngā tikanga I whakatūria tēnei rōpū kia mōhio ai a hau, he hara ētahi atu o ngā kōrero e pāna ki tēnei take. Hei whakapānui i tō tātou mōhio ki tēnei take ara te whakamahi i te pū.
I want to ask issue regarding page 30 around firearms between the events January and March. Working party to look at the processes around firearms, which is a massive issue, a massive political issue globally here in New Zealand and also in Northland itself. I wonder what regulations are in place currently and what other issues there are around this, i.e. to use firearms.
Thank you. Beryl, would you like to, did you catch that? So it's a question about page 30, events of interest regarding the firearm discharge and how that's being managed. Would you like to share a little bit more about that, please?
I can elucidate on that particular instance. So that related to a volunteer being in a training exercise in the Russell area that was led by one of our contractors, and a volunteer that was attending that that training exercise in the bush carried a firearm. He was competent with that firearm, but the process of the contractor advising the council about the incident didn't occur, and so that raised its own issue. And so on that day, that particular volunteer laid the firearm on the ground. It accidentally discharged. However, the reporting of that, there was no harm done, but the reporting of that wasn't made to council, and that's our issue. We conducted an investigation. Beryl's team conducted that investigation. We have followed up with the contractor with other processes in place, and it came down to a matter of that contractor had the procedures for that, but wasn't following them at the time. That related to the need to report that incident back to us.
Good, Don. Jono.
Kia ora, Chair, thank you. If I can just follow on. As a result of that incident, I've put in place an interim hold on any members of the public or non-contractors to be using firearms in any activities that NRC is associated with until we've undertaken the review, until I can see a robust process is in place to ensure our health and safety obligations are clearly met. So yes, we'll still have contractors that we're contracting have their own systems of process, and yes, some of our own staff will still continue to use them, but any involvement of members of the public is on hold until we've finished and completed this review. And I'm satisfied that we've got a suitable process in place.
I think it will be important for council to be updated on the progress of that. Quite serious. What kind of firearm was it, Don?
Firearm big enough caliber to kill a goat, so 223. So it was a serious firearm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for following that up, and and we'll receive updates on that as well and how that working party works. Thank you. Any other questions or comments in relation to the health and safety report? Oh, okay, well, we heard John moving it with Amy seconding. So that the report be received. All in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carry. Thank you. Next is the chair's report. We're still working on the format of this. We're getting there. And am I able to move that? Yes, I should, I think. Can someone second? Would someone like to second? Thank you. Oh, cool, Rick. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, let's just move it ahead. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thanks, Rick. Carries. Next is this Chief Executive's report, page 3. Can I have a mover? Full report, Joe, and then Jack seconding. Any questions or comments?
Somewhere down here.
Okay, Joe, you want to go first and we'll come back to Jack.
No, let Jack go. He's
No, I can't
closest,
find it.
closest to the boss.
Can't find it.
Is Jack still
Can't-
working on it?
Can't find it. Okay, I was quite intrigued to see on page 60, the freshwater quality.
What page, sorry, Joe?
60.
60.
No, sorry,
We're back.
that's wrong. Better find the page again.
Shall we go to Amy?
46.
Oh, you're right.
46, sorry, 46. And managed to, with our really top internet connection, to get down to the website, www.nrc.govt.nz/digital river network. I just wondered if the staff could throw it up on the screen and take us through that one. It seems to be quite a extensive piece of work. So it deserves explaining.
Sounds great, Joe. We could perhaps not do that in this formal meeting, but we could do it at a lunch break or for those who would like to go
Okay.
through it.
Okay. Yeah. It's pretty. Have any of you opened it up? Any of the councillors opened this one up?
Yep.
3.
A lot of work been done.
Yeah.
I was really amazed. It's unbelievable. It was interesting, Joe, because you did bring up the point at our last meeting that was this available?
Yeah.
This couldn't be answered. It was available.
This is right. Yeah.
So, amazing to see. Good work. Whoever has worked with that.
So it begs the question I've been asking for a while, has this got anything to do with the NRC's definition of what a river is in our water and soil plan work?
Thanks, Ruben. I'm sure you're hearing all that good feedback there about the website. Would you like to add some comments?
Oh, kia ora, Chair. So just very briefly, the Digital River Network is it's an update of how we identify where rivers are based on the LiDAR, the regional LiDAR that we flew a number of years ago. The previous river network that we've used has been based on, I think, around about a 30-metre digital elevation network. So that's basically a really low resolution means of identifying where rivers are. This is what this has enabled us to do, is identify at a digital scale. So this isn't us going on the ground and measuring where the rivers are. It's us using high resolution LiDAR to enable us to model where the rivers are. And this gives us much better understanding of where the catchment boundaries are, and also enables us to have a better understanding around where fencing requirements are going to be. And it gives us a really solid way of managing our aquatic environments. So it's a tool that we'll be using over the next several years to enable us to better manage our freshwater habitats.
So my last question.
Yes, and thank you. And so I feel like I have heard Councillor Carr raise the question before, so I'd be interested to hear again the answer around the definition of rivers. And I it's largely because the policy we're working on around fencing of rivers and things like that, I'm assuming, Joe.
Thank you.
So this won't help with the definition of a river. The definition of a river is something which is set out firstly in the RMA, but it's also something that we're able to provide more granularity in terms of our freshwater plan. We have received I am aware that we've got a response that we will be providing you, Councillor Carr, in respect of that definition. And so that will cover off the nuances around how a river is defined within the RMA, and we'll be providing that through me later on this week.
Great, thank you,
I
Ruben.
appreciate that. One last little very quick question. How much did this whole tool cost to produce? You know, the LiDAR and all the work done by the consultant. Oh, it's a huge body of work.
Through the chair, I can't give you the details of that off the top of my head. It was within budget, from my understanding, in terms of what we budgeted under the LTP. The LiDAR survey, from memory, that goes back before my time, but it was a co-funded project between all the territorial local authorities, from memory. So if it would help, I'm able to provide that information at a later date.
Yeah. No, I said I'd be interested. Not compelled to know. Just, yeah, thank you. That's all good.
Thank you, Ruben. Sorry. I had Peter Lucas. Jack, did you also have any?
Just a couple of small comments. One, I think it's appropriate now, because we're in April and it's reported in the C's report, to comment on the CDEM response and recovery work. I think, I know we've thanked our staff before for the amazing work they did in coordinating and organising the response, but also that to acknowledge that we had something like 38 staff were seconded from other departments to work in civil defence. That to me is a very, very good result and gives me a lot of confidence that we're a flexible organisation and people are able to drop what they're doing and help the greater good. But also that recovery is going really well right now. With Mark Treading has just released a draft recovery plan this morning, which I just had a look at this morning. But also to point out to councillors that there's a CDEM forum. It hasn't been around for about 3 years. It's on the 3rd of May at Send-Off Stadium. So I'd just like to encourage councillors to go to that. I think it's about 3 hours, 4 hours or something, on the 3rd of May. And one last comment. I'd just like to thank the maritime staff for their performance over the last month or two, not only with the cyclone, but with a whole range of issues as outlined in the report. I think I'm very proud of what our maritime team does. They're extremely flexible. They assist by security. They assist so many other bits of council and the community and the sectors, the various sectors. And we enjoy a very good reputation because of the performance of our maritime team. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Comments? Sorry, I'm mindful Amy also had her hand up. Did you want to go now and then Peter Lucas?
Yeah, mine's quite quick, if that's all right. I just wanted to give some feedback. Page 37, scrolling through.
Municipal waste.
Yeah, I think this is a new way of presenting the information, and I found as a quick look, I actually find it really good. So I appreciate that those pie charts giving us just that bit more visibility about how things are functioning. So just thank you for that. I'm not sure I'm going to say it right, but on page 55, Kalupa, the new seaweed incursion, which has happened in the Auckland marine area, but the risk it poses to our region. Just thank you for the update and really support staff to lean in on that space. It's pretty scary to read about it and see the impact it can have. So while I know we're grappling with existing incursions in our region, if we can close the door to new things, and I know that's not simple, but just really support you, Don, and the team to do what we can. And if there's ways that governance can support, please let us know. And just wanting to encourage everybody to take time to read and really absorb the climate change content in this report. There's some quite big stuff in there and some useful links. And just wondering if possible, there's an infographic which is included here, which is really hard to read, about the opportunities for scaling up climate action. And I tried to follow the link to find, I couldn't locate it easily. So just wondering, Luke, if possible, we can just be sent a copy of that infographic so we can zoom in on it. Thank you. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Peter Lucas and then Marty.
Tēnā koe e te hea mama. He kohi ngā raraunga tēnei mō te wai. He kohi ngā raraunga tēnei mō te wai. kamutu I mahi rānei te kaunihera ki ngā iwi me ngā hapu no rātou te mana I e ngā whenua. I mahi rānei tēnei kaunihera ki ngā iwi me ngā hapu no rātou te mana whenua. Ki te kohi kohi I e nei rauna. He take nui te rauna I wainga nui I ngā hapu me ngā iwi. I ngā titiro tātou ki tēnei mahere ipurangi nei. He māpi. He māpi. Hei roto hoki I tēnei mea. Ngā ingoa. Ngā ingoa o ngā takiwa. Aupou, Awanui, Bay of Islands, Green Bay, Doubtless Bay. I mahi rānei tēnei kaunihera ki ngā hapu me ngā iwi no rātou te mana whenua I e ngā takiwa ki te kohi kohi I e nei raraunga. Koia tēnā koto.
Is it your wharangi?
Te katoa. Te katoa o ngā wharangi. I mahi rānei tēnei kaunihera ki ngā hapu me ngā iwi no rātou te mana whenua I ngā takiwa I kohi kohi ngia e te kaunihera te raraunga e whakātu mai ana I roto I tēnei pūrongo.
So this data collection is about water, but this council speak to iwi and hapu, whose lands this data was collected on. Data is a big issue for hapu and iwi. If we look at this mapping, it's a map that contains names of places such as Te Aupori, Bay of Islands, Doubtless Bay, etc. Did this council consult with iwi and hapu to collect this data? Chair, which page or pages contain?
Kia ora, Chair. A lot of it, just seeking some clarification then. So the data, Councillor Jones, you're referring to any of the data within the CE's report, or are you specifically?
Tēnei te high resolution digital river network for Northland. E rārangi mai ana, ngā nama me ngā whika, e pāna ki ngā takiwa. Kei reira hoki ngā ingoa o ngā takiwa, whenoko taku pātai I mahi rānei, tēnei kaunihera. Did this council work with iwi and hapu to harvest this data, to collect this data?
Kia ora, Chair. For the digital networks one, I assume, and I'm looking at Ruben, that this is largely a desktop assessment for the digital rivers network. So in response, I'd say no, there wasn't. For all of our other data that we collect, I think my response would be mixed. There is some more recent environmental monitoring and data that we collect that has had good iwi and hapu engagement on. I would say, however, that we've also got a network that's been there historically and that we would not have had significant iwi or hapu engagement in the establishment of that historic network and the data that we collect. I'm talking about, for example, freshwater data. I also note that this is an issue that's been discussed at TTMAC and that there is a discussion around developing a policy for council around when we go and collect data, what our process is for engagement with mana whenua when we're establishing those networks and collecting that data. That though doesn't go to the next step, which Councillor Jones has spoken to me about, both in his councillor capacity and before councillor being a councillor, around data sovereignty. And once you collect the data, what is the governance and partnership with mana whenua over that data, which is a larger conversation and one that this council has not had, and that we most likely will need to.
Just on that note, Madam Chair, I just want to share with us that it's an opportunity that shouldn't be missed, particularly because when we look at the SNA situation from last year and we think about how that evolved as an example. This is a special opportunity for us to navigate that space differently, particularly when we know that data is often weaponized against Indigenous people and their right to develop economies. So I just want to plant that seed there and leave it there. Kia ora.
Marty.
Thank you. And just following on from the question or the comment on page 37 of the wastewater, municipal wastewater treatment plants, really graphic. Thank you very much. It puts it right in our face. It puts it right in the public face. So I suppose not grandstanding or anything, but the public might like to know why is ahipara, which expires in 2033, 50% of the time it's significantly non-compliant, and mihi, which has expired, is also 50% non-compliant. It's putting the blowtorch on it, I suppose. Why is it able to function for so long being so non-compliant? And how do we get improvement in that space?
Chair, as you'll see on the right-hand side column, enforcement action and response, we've issued a combination of abatement notices and an infringement notice, which carries a fine. And they're also putting in UV disinfection. So action has been taken and there has been a response. The mihi one, I would have to get look into that non-compliance in more detail, because that's currently in the process of being replaced. That will be a challenging one in regards to plant upgrades, noting that I think, and I might be wrong, is in the order of only 200 connections, and it's many millions of dollars being looked at for the upgrade. So it's quite a expensive upgrade required for small population base. Yeah,
thank you. It's no criticism of anybody or anything in particular, but just the fact that we have got systems that can be non-compliant for so long, and we seem to be a little bit impotent as council in general, or the whole process is for being able to bring that thing to rise. Whether we're in acknowledging that there's small communities having to put with our present systems, are having to put up a lot of money to be able to do the right thing, like with the two-tie. Perhaps we should be addressing what are the more appropriate systems that we could be using down the line in all small communities that don't require using good water to flush good nutrients down very expensive pipes into the water.
Kia ora, Marley. Jono, would you like to respond?
Oh, kia ora, Chair. Thank you, councillors, and good to see or good to hear the feedback that the way of representing the information is working. This was in response to Councillor Carr's request last council meeting to both prioritise it and to more clearly show the compliance history. I think we've also agreed that we're going to provide a more detailed korero on this through the Natural Resources Working Party. And my expectation is that we see that come through that Natural Resources Working Party to discuss specifics. Also noting that following last council meeting or one of the workshops, I circulated the letters that we've now start circulating to each district council on a 6-monthly basis, and Colin is now starting to have meetings with his equivalent at the district council on that 6-monthly rotation, so that we have clear milestones, deliverables, expectations discussed in advance to try and address the prolonged nature of some of these non-compliance and the timeframe for progressing consents. I've received 2 letters back from 2 of those councils, which I'm equally happy to share with councillors. That's district council responses, but very supportive of us maintaining a focus on this. Reporting will continue here, but hoping that the more detailed discussion of how we're progressing this and how we're making sure that there's progress is workshopped through the Natural Resources Working Party.
And just reiterating, I really appreciate this pictorial plan. Thanks.
Thanks, Marty. Amy?
Just to, yeah, acknowledge, I guess, what Marty's saying, and Jono, you as well, just the importance of us doing all we can in this space as we move through the freshwater plan change. This is the other side of the coin that always gets asked about, and it is so important to demonstrate that we are across all the things that are impacting on our freshwater and our coastal water. Just a question for you, Jono, around this sort of data and the conversations we are having with the district councils about their current, state and the works to be done. How are we drawing in the entity A in this, with that being the future horizon for resourcing, funding, prioritising? How are we making sure that those conversations are lining up with where we need them to support us, and hopefully ensuring we get good long-term solutions, not just what is affordable now?
Kia ora, Chair. So I met with the new CE for Entity A just at the same time that he came up last week, discussed the history here, and have provided the CEO for Entity A the correspondence that are provided to the district council CEs around our perspective on both the consenting history and their compliance history, so that I'm having exactly the same, or our staff are having exactly the same conversation with Entity A as we are with the district councils, so that they are well aware of the priority and issues in the north. I think also you'll recall, and I'm going to hold John to it, of he's going to have a focus on the north for getting compliance and upgrading systems. I wrote John an email following that saying that was great to hear, and here it is in writing from me. And I think it's up to us to make sure that the Entity A does have a focus on the north.
And just reinforcing that as they go through their process of getting their governance established, that we're here to support as well, so we can ensure that at all levels there's that understanding that Northland is the priority.
The other part I think that's key is the relationship agreement that John referred to, and that is there in legislation to make sure that we have a positive working relationship with Entity A, and that our relationship agreement really clearly articulates when we're not on the same page as a regulator with the entity that's providing the service as to what we can expect each other to be doing, so that they know that we're not just going to sit here on our hands. They know that these will be our proactive steps when we see non-compliance or things not progressing as expected.
Okay, Joe, I'm assuming this is along the same lines.
Okay, just like to tell Toko with the korero. Good. Now, why can't we as a council actually think of how we can impose, is the word, because when you read your last line, the resource consent, the right to impose stuff, okay, on the councils that are erring with these sewage systems significantly when their discharges to water to require an urgent installation of UV disinfection. So we can say, look, it's not compliant, we've ensured that the discharge is pathogen free. Okay, and even if we've got to use a carrot, not to even assist that, but that's got to be the bottom line. And it's great concern to see that the recommendations for the COCO scheme don't include UV disinfection. It's discharged into the Hokianga Harbour. So this disinfection, a lot of people, it doesn't address cultural issues, but it addresses public hygiene. And I think, I really support our council taking that leadership.
Thanks, Joe. I see Rick. John, I'm not sure if you wanted to respond to Joe.
I might just to make sure I don't get it technically wrong, ask Colin if he can respond to the why can't we impose the mechanisms that Councillor Carr there outlined when we see non-compliance in existing consents.
We are with EEs, for instance. That suggestion has been carried through in EE.
Okay, so firstly, in terms of imposing, yes, we have an opportunity when the consent is replaced to propose conditions. So that's one opportunity, and one of the things we do in terms of making recommendations is take into account all our plans, policies, national regulations.
Yep.
There's nothing nationally or in our plans that require installation of UV automatically. So that's just clarifying that there is no mandatory requirement that we can utilise to do that. So it does depend on each assessment of each individual application for a new or replacement consent in that regard. Obviously, there are some current systems that do have UV. As you note with Para, even though that has a consent, because of the issues there, they're looking at introducing that UV treatment unit outside of the like consent requirement. So that's another mechanism, but there's nothing mandatory about imposition we can rely on to require that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the recommendations that staff make are not binding. They will be heard before open only Māori public hearing. Submitters can express viewpoints. The hearing commissioners are independent, and ultimately they can add additional conditions as well if they feel they're required.
I don't draw this one out, but generally NRC specifies usually is the last condition of their consent that they've got the right to review if circumstances change. Now, doesn't that apply to the public sewerage schemes? Haven't you got the same?
Oh, it depends on what purpose you have in the review clause.
Okay, so well, it's a detail I'll have a chat to you about if I can.
Yes, yeah, great. So we've been told that we are going to dive deeper into this in future natural resources with
operational stuff.
But all of this together, because I have to have conversations with the mayors about all this, you know, constantly, and yeah, it's good. It's good that we have so much focus by elected members on it. I don't also know that Councillor Hilda Harawira made a declaration that she was intending on having no more sewage going into waterways in the Far North District, and we'll probably talk with her on Friday at the Te Oneroa Tohe board meeting. Yes, yeah. Stuart, did you have your hand up?
Kia ora. Just an add that at the moment, the likelihood of the split of the 4 water entities into 10, they will be along the lines of a regional council boundaries.
Ours have stayed the same. The announcement was that entity A would remain.
So that's been fully confirmed?
Yes.
Okay.
The new entities have been confirmed.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So
they kept us the same. I see most of the changes as largely political myself. Yeah. And then we're going to explore the path of relationship moving forward. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for keeping an eye on that.
Through the chair, just one thing I'd like to add to what Jonathan said earlier about the exchange of information with with the CEO of Entity A. I also provided him a copy of this report and the links to future, so he can get future reports from our website. So that's also been done as a means of reminding him of the issues in
Thanks, Colin. Any other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Rick. Yes.
No problem. I know I'm hidden in the background, so that's no problem. I just want to back up Jack, by saying please come to the Civil Defence Forum next week. It will be great. It's well worth going to. Also want to back them up with the maritime team. They had a tough time, but they still managed to get that safety work over Easter, so good on them for that. And also to the transport team for the morning tea for bus drivers. That was a great initiative and I hope that was well received. So good on you for doing that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. John?
Oh, little comment. So page 50 on the F block. I jumped too far ahead.
Still on the C report.
Sounds like Adolf Hitler built this. I just wondered whether these could be, you know, if you had a few spare ones, where the farmers could sort of have them on their place for a short period of time to see where they've got these ferrets and stoats. As I know you're referring to a certain area, but if farmers were educated, if they could borrow something similar, you know, for a week or two, it might show up the extent of these animals, as I'm sure we've got them around home, but you only see them, you know, once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
But the name is Bog, yeah.
Oh, the F-bomb. Don, did you hear John's comment? Did you want to make comment about the traps?
Ferret trap.
Could you repeat, please, John?
Oh, it's just the F-bomb we got there. You know, it probably works really well, but you're trying to get ferrets and weasels and stuff. We see them once every 2 or 3 years. But we don't know that, well, farmers don't really know they're there, but if you have a trap, that's the point that farmers may use, just one, you could advertise the fact, it might help farmers get more involved with this program outside the area we're talking about.
Yes. So the use of these new technologies as they come, as we are made aware of them, gets put out through the community pest control, you know, areas. But at this stage, not to sector groups. So take that on board, and perhaps we can get some of this new technology stuff back out through some of the primary sector group contacts, just to make them aware of what's coming. There's a new mousetrap invented every so many months. You know, the best trap, and the F-bomb is, you know, it could be. I know we don't know yet. What we do know about ferrets is that they love running through pipes, and in the South Island, traps set at the end of a culvert or a large bit of drainage pipe that many of our farmers have is a good Kiwi, you know, substitute. So these sorts of things that we try and publicise at our event days, workshops, etc. But let us take that one back and see if we can seek a bit of an appetite through some of our primary sector groups. Kia ora.
Okay, Rick, I'm assuming that's still your hand remaining up.
I shall take it down.
Okay, just checking.
I'll replace it with a thumbs up.
Just a mainly by Jack with his bus and Joe. When we have this budget and the variance and everything, does that cover management, like the NRC management fee to run this bus operation? It's just total money, coins going in and money coming out.
Oh, I can answer that. I can answer if there's a management fee. I assume there isn't, but I defer to Louise on that.
No, there is no management fee.
It's just for your box.
Are you looking at the table on page?
Yeah, I'm just interested to know, like, that gives us an indication of income.
There's no management fee.
So we don't have a budget that oversees this bus operation there from.
We have staff that oversee it.
Yeah.
But they have other roles as well. That's not their sole role.
Okay, so I've met upstairs. He's a guy that's he seems to be the primary guy.
Chris. Yep.
Is that right? So is his wages added into like the running of this?
No.
Okay. So would it be any chance of seeing what it really costs us to run the bus operation?
In terms of taking into account staff.
Staff and put over overhead costs. Like, is this like what I just see? It looks like we're sort of, you know, it's running under budget. But like, what is the real cost to have this bus?
So the table that you're looking at there is revenue.
Yes.
Is only revenue.
It's just budgeted revenue.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Doesn't take into account.
Okay. Do we ever get to find out what it actually costs us to run the bus?
I can get them to put their staff to put something together.
Yeah, look, it is available.
Is it?
regional land transport plan, it's got it all in it.
Okay, that's fine. Don't do any work. I'll go through Joe and see what I can see.
Kia ora, Chair, we can easily provide the information on what the budgets are.
Yeah.
And what the contract prices are and what the expected revenue is. That's all transparently available. It won't take much time to.
It's just interesting to be added on top of this, like we've just seen this, and then as a true reflection, that's all I'm asking.
I'll make comment there. Look, we plan, the Regional Transport Committee plan to workshop this. It'll be a confidential workshop, but councillors, of course, will be welcome to come.
Okay.
That would be excellent. Thank you.
Just ask some question.
All right.
Just if I can just tease that out a little bit further, it'd be good to also have the opportunity costs involved with it as well, and the long-term planning behind it. You know, although we might be having it's an investment cost at the moment, call it a loss. There's trying to get that trend towards, if we don't have it, it will never succeed. If we do have it, it's going to take quite a while to bed in before there's success, where people are not going to be using their vehicles, but are going to be getting on the buses. So really to get those long-term plans. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, further to the CE report, any other councillor questions or comments?
Well, just one question of Don, I suppose, on the Pāteke release. I know we were novel one Pāteke shortly after release from a cat. And I wonder, have you heard of any further progress on they've got the cat, or whether they've got the alleged cat, the alleged guilty, or what the situation is with the Pāteke? Have you heard anything back?
No, sorry, Marty, I haven't had any updates.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tragedy to hear that there was one novel. I'll try and find out from
the locals.
Yeah.
We can follow up.
Yes,
thank you, Don.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so the recommendation moved by Joe and seconded by Jack is that the CE report be received. All in favour say aye. Against? Carried, thank you. Next is receipt of committee minutes, page 73. The Joint Regional Economic Development minutes, namely. Would anyone like to move? Well, I don't mind moving that. If I'll move that. Would anyone like to second? Marty? Seen as.
Yeah, I'm happy to second, and with the comment that I've asked for. We didn't get a lot of reporting. I don't recall getting a lot of reporting in the last triennium from the Joint Regional Economic Development Committee. So I've asked that it be, real clarity that if anybody wants to know anything about it, ask Daryl and Manuela. They'll be far better at giving a better report than myself. I'm there in the hotspot, and they're the ones that are observing and taking note.
Good to point out. The Economic Development Committee is mainly just charged with a few things. It doesn't really have an ongoing work program, but currently we are working hard on electing new directors for Northern Link, and Mayor Jepson, Penetawi and I have been elected to the ad hoc committee to do those interviews. So really looking forward to the new directors. And yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
it's okay, Marty. Question.
Just a question, actually. Does this committee have a TOR, a terms of reference?
Yes.
Yes.
It does. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So it includes the what we just worked on in terms of the statement of intent. The statement of intent. That's our main role, is to review that.
Northern Link statement of intent.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's why we had shareholder comments go through to them. Yeah.
You're happy with it?
And that guides the work. Go, Marty.
Yeah, one thing I will report is there's a huge interest in becoming a director from some pretty high-powered, high caliber
Yeah, we had around 50.
applicants. 48 applications.
Yeah.
international and right throughout the country of some pretty high powered or high caliber applicants.
It can only be good news, can't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it shows a real interest that this is a region that's really worth investing in time and effort.
Okay, and saying that, any other questions or comments? Yes, Peter Lucas.
Just a very brief comment, and it's one of orthography. Pa, ha. So long sound on the pa, not on the ha, for the apologies. Kia ora tātou.
Oh, good way.
Thank you.
Can we catch that? Chris, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right then, so that the recommendation of the unconfirmed minutes be received, moved by myself and Marty. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carry. Thank you very much. Now, we are coming into the page 79. Oh, this is the public one. You've got it. Yeah, sorry. So we need to.
Just to move in a second.
I'm happy to move.
One by one, is it?
Oh, you can carry them all together. Recommendation 2 is basically giving the specific reasons for each item why we're going into public excluded, and the third is asking for our independent financial advisor to remain.
Happy to move all three.
Thank you, Marty and Jack. You
Yep.
second that? All right, thank you. And we don't have any public on, do we?
No, that's correct, but when you're ready to go to public excluded, I'll stop with live streaming.
True.
What do I need? Oh, sorry. So we've got a mover and seconder. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Let's do that. Thank you, Chris.
We usually forget.